Next generation manufacturing is a term that has been used or coined to call attention to the changing manufacturing environment and associated needs for a workforce whose skills align to advanced technology. The next generation manufacturing study was designed to better define the strategies and business activities necessary for world-class performance and success into the next generation. Each of our panelists today has experience not only running businesses, but running successful businesses, and has had a vision for the next generation manufacturing growth. Today, I'd like to focus on a couple of the key initiatives from the study and the perspectives that have positioned them to be competitive today and into the next generation. So good morning again, gentlemen. Joel, you kind of started us off already with the definition of manufacturing from the perspective of Quad. And I'd like to kind of build off of that definition if you could. Next generation manufacturing can have a different meaning to different manufacturers. So for us to have a good, strong perspective, it would be important for each of us to have an understanding of how you position that, that definition. So if you could, maybe put a next generation definition together in the context of your organization. I'll start with you, Joel, just to continue your comment.
Well, I think I gave you one definition of it. The other definition, I think, is next generation business, which is if you're not kind of looking at yourselves and what role you play with your customers these days and kind of change the Rubik's Cube about how you play in any industry, I think you're going to be in trouble. The example I have here, and I didn't talk about Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is about transformation of how Quad plays with our customers and really how print plays in marketing. And so we've really transitioned from being a good printer of high quality print products to someone who's actually going to help you manufacture content and market yourselves and grow your top line using print, but using all the channels. So we're actually taking the place of a lot of the big agencies now because the world kind of went this way and said everything has to be digital, and now marketers are realizing that's not the case. You know, they talk about omni-channel, which they really meant Twitter to Facebook. You know, all this other stuff will get replaced, and it's not working. And so what they realize is it's all the channels coming together to actually create more opportunity for marketing. So at Quad, you know, I've given you the manufacturing definition, but I think you also have to build in who are you to your customer and how do you play these days? Because I think if you're just considered an output or a vendor or a product that they use, you're probably going to get displaced at some point because businesses are looking for more.
Either? Mike, Al?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you and welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. I think you asked me to just do a little bit of a brief background on myself. I'm Al Antoniewicz. I'm President and Chief Operating Officer for Spancrete. And I'm very proud of the fact that, actually when Joel, we were talking when we first met, Joel was talking about some of the things he needs in his industry like electricians. And I actually started my career as an electrician. I went to school at MATC after I got out of high school. And I started in that side of the business. I worked for Joy Global. It was the old Harnischweger Corporation. Got into the business as an industrial engineer. And then later in my adult life, then earned my bachelor's degree. So I'm very proud of the fact that I started, in the trades. And, one of the things I think that's extremely important is to make it, for all of us, to make it more attractive for people to start out and say there are other career paths. It's not only starting. There's technology. When you take a look at all of the things in computers that are happening right now, you take a look at additive manufacturing. I'm on a board of a company that makes components for the aerospace industry, and they're printed. You talk about 3D printing, you think about some of the videos we saw in plastics, and I'm here to tell you they're making parts out of Inconel and making parts out of copper and such. So there's a lot coming down the road for us, and I think that one of my messages to the group is we have in the workforce right now, we have 4 generations. We have the traditionalists, we have the boomers, we have the Xers, we have the millennials, and we have the Zs coming up. And we've got to figure out from a collaborative perspective how internally to get all of those groups working together, recognizing that technology means different for everyone. But the technology also that Joel talked about through the supply chain with the customer, all the way through the suppliers and your manufacturing, to use that technology across all those industries is incredibly important, I think, as far as next step, including the technology piece of it. And one last thing I'd like to say to start is thank you for Joel, great customer. There's a lot of Spancrete in the structures we're in today, so thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Again, my name is Mike Reeder. I'm president of Precision Plus, located in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. So unlike Joel and Joel's corporation, we've got a worldwide employment of about 70 people. So we're definitely on the smaller end of the spectrum, and but that doesn't mean we're not equally passionate about, you know, organizational improvement and engagement with the community on all levels. When we talk about next generation manufacturing, you know, I really look at it as, you know, our ability to identify the long-term trends on the horizon, and how are we able to then make the appropriate investments in talent and technology that allows us to take advantage of those opportunities that we see. And so, you know, we're going to talk more today about some of the strategies and tactics that we're using. But, you know, for next generation manufacturing, if we're not focused on this, it's going to be difficult to get to the next generation. So that's, we'll talk more about that shortly.
Thank you. Reminder, or I should mention, if you have a question along the way, we're going to go right to about 9:05. So if you have a question along the way, feel free to text that in as we go. I have some prepared questions ahead of time, but we'll try to mix some of those into the conversation. Any questions that we don't get, we'll do a follow-up article in BizTimes to address those questions. Okay. As we continue, the themes that you've kind of already touched on in terms of the technology, additive manufacturing, the people, the process, these are the same kinds of things that we've struggled with for quite a while, and actually came out in that new generation study. As we know that they're there, but we're not really being successful at addressing them. I want to maybe spend a little time talking about the elephant in the room, and that's the people piece. We have a unemployment rate less than 5%. We have 350,000 jobs available in manufacturing. How do we close that gap? What are you doing differently in your organizations to kind of close that talent gap? And how important is talent management as part of a strategic direction? And Alan, do you want to?
Sure, I'll be glad to start. First of all, we look at, we do a lot of work and a lot of emphasis at Spancrete on organizational development. For me, that's a very key strategy. In fact, we just had our strategic planning sessions a week ago, and we take typically 3 days to go off-site, and we spent literally the last day completely discussing organization. Talk about attracting talent, how do we integrate our talent, how do we integrate technology with our talent. So we believe that's extremely important as far as being able to attract employees, to be able to retain employees, and also to stay on the cutting edge on technology. When you think about the construction industry, most people don't think about high technology. But I'm here to tell you that 3D modeling, for instance, you know, right now we go in to visit customers. We visit, you know, the Joel Quadraccis who want to build a new structure and get up front with them with our 3D models and say, we can simulate for you what your building's going to look like, how the manufacturing, not only from your manufacturing engineer is going to flow through, but how the building can be an asset for you, how can we make it so it's expandable. So we use these tools, so we have to have a vision in a company of how we're going to use innovation as a corporation, and we bake that right into our strategic plans. And you know, one of the challenges on the organization side is, depending where you're at from a technology perspective, I pride myself in the fact of loving technology, always have. But you know, I've run into a lot of people organizationally. They get to a certain point, they get to mid-career, and they boil down to, they say, well, geez, I'm too old to learn anything new. And I mean, that's ridiculous. In my mind, it's a complete state of mind. It doesn't matter if you're, you know, my grandkids, 7 and 5 years old, or you're 90 years old. My mother just got she's 85. She just got a brand new iPad Pro. You know, she upgraded her computer, and she can't wait to, you know, continue to talk about it. So we do a lot of work on that. We've actually also recently used a tool called the Good Jobs. And the Good Jobs, we felt, was something that was real helpful for us, because one of the challenges we have when we're trying to recruit people, people say, what is your culture? at Spancrete. And though it sounds like, boy, that's an easy question to answer, that's really tough. You know, you can see the culture at Quadracci as you look at the pictures on the wall, as you walk in the structures, you listen to Joel, you get a sense for what the culture is, but it's really hard. So we went on, used the Good Jobs as a tool. And basically, we went through the process. We have it on our website now. And we bring employees, we retain or recruit employees. We encourage them to take a look at that. It takes a look at all the different aspects that we value as a company. And it talks about everything from green to technology to career advancement. And that's very important. So we're trying to make our workforce so that it is attractive to the traditionals all the way to the Zs.
The elephant in the room really is, why do people not want to go into manufacturing? Well, and let's talk about that. You know, we talked about earlier, it is the last ranking category for students coming up through the education system. Manufacturing, to most people in the public forum, is still viewed as dark, dirty, and dangerous, and therefore they do not want their children going anywhere near it. So what we need to do is we need to change the conversation in the public forum about what is manufacturing today, particularly advanced manufacturing. Certainly you can still find those dark, dirty, and dangerous facilities, but I'll tell you they're not going to be around long. We also need to make manufacturing a destination career, not a default. I'm not hearing enough about that in the education community, and so it's incumbent upon all of us business leaders as well as parents, to get involved in the conversation, talk about what is manufacturing today. We talked about that manufacturing pays substantially above average. There's a lot of jobs available out there. Why are people not beating down our doors with applications trying to get in? You know, it's surprising to me. But, so here we are, Manufacturing Week. You know, they talk about Manufacturing Day. I've heard some of my friends talk about, well, hell, Manufacturing Day is every day to us. And for those people that are passionate about it, it's truly every day. So, you know, we do things to try to celebrate manufacturing. We're going to have another open house. This year we're going to go to a Saturday program. We've got to open up our doors. We've got to invite the public in, everyone. Competitors, friends, community, everyone, so they can see the beauty of what we do and the opportunities that exist for all of our children. Because without that, they're ignorant of it. We're all ignorant of some things. And unless we get aggressive in changing the conversation, we're going to be stuck with the status quo.
I'd take it a step bigger and just say, in our rush as a country to be a service economy, we forgot about the basics. How many of you, have a kid that went to four-year college, or you want to go to four-year college? Yeah? How many of you know a kid who probably doesn't want to go to four-year college and would prefer to do something with his hands and go take a two-year technical college? All of us do. So what's happened is we've made it almost a sin not to want to go to four-year college. We've sent kids there, saddled them with debt, who may not end up getting all out of it because they would rather then come back and do something with their hands. So we've had a lot of emphasis on working with WCTC here, other technical colleges around the country where our plants are, because we need those skill sets. We've got a whole lot of people who are retiring, and we haven't filled the pipeline behind them. And so try and find an my head of maintenance is right here shaking his head. Try and find a mechanical person or an electrician anywhere in this country today, and it's very difficult. And so the private sector has had to start filling in the gaps while maybe the public sector starts to catch up with this. And a lot of people, this isn't a new story, but we've developed, oh, by the way, how many schools do you know no longer have a shop class, right? It's gone. We're starting to see some of that come back. And so we've developed a youth apprenticeship program with some of the local high schools that's accredited. They can come work with us as an intern, and then hopefully we get them into another program we call, which is more of an advanced apprenticeship program, where we've taken, since 2002, we started a program where we got kids out of high school who came in and thought they'd be doing manual labor the rest of their lives. Someone who had a spark, put them into this program where for 2 to 3, 4 years, they work in the electrical department and go to WCTC and graduate as a journeyman. And so I've run into some of these kids. I ran into one kid, he goes, I just had to meet you. He goes, I'm in the apprenticeship program. He says, I'm one more year and I'm going to be an electrician. He says, I never would have been able to do that if it wasn't for you guys, and I'm never leaving you, right? And so we've had to layer on this stuff. We're partnering now with the local schools who may still have job classes. In the past, we were about, who has a print school? Who has something graphic oriented? As well as over, Quad has supported WCTC, their print program. Well, that's less our need. We can teach you to do that. We have to teach you how to operate those forklifts there that have no people anymore. That's what you'll see out there. Those didn't exist a year ago. And so, again, I think there's a big skills gap because we took our eye off the basics as a country. And private sector, we have to figure out how to fill that because it will happen. It's painful to get there.
So what are you doing differently in terms of your talent management? I mean, what are you doing to actually recruit the right type of candidate into your organizations?
Yeah, one of the things that we do at Spancrete is we actually have a collaboration with the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. We sponsor an architectural studio. And basically, it's graduate students that every year that are interested in going into the architectural world, and it's a precast studio. So basically, what we do is we have our engineers internally in the company work with the architects and teach them and bring them along as far as what they can do with precast in the industry, and teach them how to do different architectural projects using precast. So for instance, last year, one of the processes they use is they put some renderings together for the new Buck Stadium. And then this year, they actually put some together for the transit center downtown. So we've been sponsoring this for 8 years now, and I've been involved with it for 7 years. I can see every year it continues to advance, particularly as the technology continues to advance. So that's one of the ways that we look to attract employees because we need engineers. So basically, again, when you think about the construction industry, you really don't think about technology, but so much of it for us, we use a software called Revit. It's a 3D modeling software, and it's so important for us to have people that really understand technology in our business. So that's some of the things we're doing as far with a partnership with a local school.
At Precision Plus, keep in mind we're a company of 70. We've worked with about 7 different local high schools. Most closely with Elkhorn right in our backyard. We've developed youth apprenticeship programs. We currently have either 5 or 6 students this fall. One of them is in IT, the rest of them are in the manufacturing space. Those are students that have 2 to 3 hours in their class block that they can carve out to stay with us for a big chunk of their day. So they're starting at as early as 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and then headed off to school at 9, 9:30, 10 o'clock. During the summertime, we offer a different program, and those are for some of the students that don't have time in their blocks during the course of the year because they're in the top 5% of their class. We constantly go out in front of these schools and educators and tell them we're looking for the best and the brightest. Don't give us your leftovers that you can't figure out what to do with. You can send them my competitor, honestly, but we're looking for the best and the brightest. And so we've tried to develop programs that don't use them as you just grunt labor. We pay them a good wage, far above what they can get on a typical entry-level job. We task them with challenges. We mentor them throughout the building. We show them all aspects of our operations. And so we've got the youth apprenticeship program during the school year. We got the internships during the summer. We've had as many as 18 students through the summer internship. To do that, I had to hire an educator. I've been trying to build programs for years with manufacturing folks that were good at building stuff and solving problems, but they couldn't figure out how to develop the curriculum. So I went out and had to poach somebody from education, and that was probably one of the single best decisions I ever made. To bring somebody in like that, it really changed the game for us. And so that person spent 2 years with us and funneled back to education. And we've got another former tech ed instructor that's in the building with us now, leading our education and workforce development area. We're also partnered heavily with Gateway Technical College. We've helped invest in a new manufacturing wing where they have all kinds of new equipment in there, including CNC Swiss turning. We're also partnered with MSOE. We've got Shaku here from MSOE. We're a RPC member as well, trying to stay in touch with what's going on with the 3D printing. And so we're going with a stratified approach. We are looking for those that can fill all aspects of our manufacturing business, up to including the very highest engineering and senior management levels.
You know, we kind of looked at ourselves and kind of pointed out the obvious. If you want to hire me, put a middle-aged white guy in front of me to recruit me. You want to hire a millennial? Don't put a middle-aged white guy in front of him. You want to hire a Hispanic? Don't put a middle-aged white guy in front of a Hispanic who doesn't speak Spanish. And so what we've really tried to do is really look at ourselves and say, we want to recruit from all these different places. And you need to put people who come from those places. You know, the millennials speak a different language. And they also, you know, trying to recruit into a printing company, you know, they think we're dead, right? But yet we recruit some really great kids from millennials because they also pick companies and they pick comfort. They want to know that you understand them. The other thing is we've recently started something which the Marines kind of taught us, which is Semper Fi, where they actually, for recruiting, they take some of their best and brightest who are up and coming and tell them they have to go recruit for 2 years. And then they can come back and continue up the ramp. And so we're in the process, we've just started designating some of our best and brightest on the manufacturing floor who are really good operators, who it really hurts to pull them away from the machine, to go recruit for 2 years. Because they can recognize, you know, we're looking for people who have lights in their eyes, right? It's not necessarily a college grade or a high school grade. We're looking for people who have a light on, and they know how to find those people. And so it's about your approach of who's recruiting for you at every level, whether it's demographic or skill set wise. You know, I think if you kind of take people who are like, okay, you know, Joe can't work on the floor anymore, let's put Joe and go out and hire. Joe may be a really good guy, but he might be the wrong person.
Joel, you made the comment early about, you know, being in that next generation mindset means that you're always looking out. So it isn't just about recruiting the right kind of talent to you, it's how do you get your current workforce to advance along with you. Wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of those training programs as a group, but keep this concept in mind. For the smaller manufacturer, there's a huge risk in investment, right? As we bring that workforce up to a certain level, the likelihood of being poached increases for the smaller. How do you justify that kind of an investment?
Well, I'll tell you, we put a number to it. It's about $5,000 to lose someone off the floor. That's painful for us. But I think the future of keeping people is also going to be the total holistic approach. You know, what Freighter's doing with their programs with helping companies manage medicine, or actually making it more accessible. QuadMed, we've been doing it for years, and we do it for a lot of companies. I think that it's the whole employee. It's about, you know, I started asking our guys, well, why aren't we in our advertisements, why aren't we saying not only can you come and get a good job with a great company, but we can also give you access to some of the best healthcare out there. You know, so you got to think differently, and you got to take a holistic approach. And on the healthcare thing, you know, whether it's the Freighter people here, QuadMed people, I don't care. If you're a small business or a large business, you're getting hammered right now. And some of the biggest solution there is taking control of it yourself so that you can keep people healthy. The system is not designed for preventative health care. It's designed to fix the problem when it happens. But then the training programs. I mean, we have a trainee program, you know, for college kids coming out. We are getting some incredible millennials because of the way we grab them. And they go work on the floor. Then they go work throughout the company, and it's kind of a weeding out process for us and for them. You know, do they want to work hard? Are they willing to get their hands dirty? Well, if you're not, that's not who Quad is. So, you know, I could go on for an hour on this, so I'll let my two friends talk.
Okay. Yeah.
So, you know, from an organizational perspective, again, I think what's we just talked about is retaining talent is also extremely important. Again, is looking across how do you make sure you have an organization that people want to stay working for. And one of the points that I make at the businesses that I've been in charge of is get in front of a room, and the first time I said it at Spancrete, people looked at me, got a funny look, but I said, you know what? If I'm doing my job as a president of this company, if something ever happened to this business, everybody in this room could get an equal to or better job. If I'm challenging you and challenging the organization, and it's a win-win. It's a win for the employee because we're challenging the employee to continue to upgrade your skill sets, continue to upgrade your training, continue to upgrade your education. Of course, the byproduct of that is Spancrete has a better play from that perspective, a more experienced employee. We do lose people, that you've invested a lot of money in, and sometimes that's hurtful, that's harmful. But on the other hand, I think more times than not, I've seen people that have left, and when I take a look at it, it's usually the 90-10 rule. You lose that 10%. But in some cases, it's been good for that employee too. And I've had to step back and say, maybe that was a good career move for them. Maybe this just wasn't quite the right fit. So, there's a lot of aspects to it, as Joel mentioned. But organizational development internally, we actually have shifted, and we're in a process of shifting from performance reviews, because we use a process to manage our business called goal deployment process. So everybody really, once a month, we go through all of our goals and objectives. So we really do that all the time. It's continually. We still right now have a traditional mid-year and after, end of the year review process, but we're actually transitioning out of that now, and the process is going to focus mainly on development. That's what the employee conversation is going to be: development, investment in yourself, and career path versus, because again, we're doing it every month, it's redundant. So we're looking at different ways to approach the talent aspect of the business.
But I think when you invest in talent and becoming better people, they tend to be more loyal.
Absolutely.
Investing.
Absolutely is. That's exactly right.
And Joel talked about the long-term investment, and that so many companies got away from making that investment, particularly those that are owned by Wall Street firms or venture capital. It's about bottom line today, and we have very little turnover. In fact, we just had somebody leave a couple of months ago. Thought that the grass was greener on the other side of the fence, and lo and behold, a couple weeks ago we got that phone call. Hey, can I come back? And
the grass is dead over there.
Yeah, it wasn't so green.
Artificial turf.
But our employees see the youth engagement that we have underway and the investment that we make in the people that are currently in the building. And I'll tell you, bringing the youth in, and particularly those that are enthusiastic, passionate, and smart, as well as humble. I mean, that's an attribute that is difficult to find these days. The humility. We get some of these kids that come in, and by God, they're smart, and they're not going to let you forget about that. And so they spend all day long telling you about how much they know, and they're not there to listen and learn. But we've found some of the best young adults. It's been amazing. But so it has really elevated the morale of everyone else in the building that, hey, we've got a long-term strategy of success. We're making the long-term investments. People have asked me, what is the ROI of this investment that we're making? Small company doing all this stuff. What's the ROI? I said, well, what's the ROI of doing nothing? I mean, we've identified talent as our #1 strategic threat. And I talk to people in our industry across the U.S., same thing. I've traveled to Europe, same thing. Germany and Switzerland, where working with your hands and craftsmanship is still held in very high esteem. They're struggling to attract the next generation. Terrible problems. And so if we think we've got a problem now, 10, 15 years down the road, it's going to be acute pain that we're dealing with. So those people that are on the forefront making the long-term investments are going to be well-positioned to take advantage of things.
One of the questions actually is coming from the audience with relation to higher employment or unemployment in Milwaukee, Racine, Kenosha. How do we engage that workforce? The inner city, maybe less educated individuals, or is that not a place that we should be looking?
Place we have to be looking. I mean, it's a huge problem. I think Milwaukee was just rated as one of the most violent cities in the country. We've tried, part of our problem was transportation, and we had a bus route going into areas where we could hire. The recession hit, that fell apart, but also the other problem was you can't just have one bus route. We were finding people had to take another bus to get to the bus. Next thing you know, it's an hour and a half. I think east-west transportation is one of the biggest challenges for Milwaukee because there's a whole lot of jobs out here. And I think we concentrate a lot on north-south, but actually a lot of these businesses are out here. And we're trying to hire 500 people right now. And the fact is, as a business, you can't just pick one population. You have to pick them all. And every one of those populations has really good people in it. I don't care what the headlines say. Just because it's a blighted community doesn't mean that there aren't the people with the lights on, right? And fixing that, the first step is let's give them access. And they don't have access in Milwaukee, in the segregated part of the city. And that's, to me, a big threat to Milwaukee.
Yeah, one of the challenges we have in where our headquarters are in Waukesha, so that's where the majority of our professional employees are. We also have operations in Florida and Georgia, but our main office, our main plant rather, is up in Manitowoc County. And when the recession was at the bottom, actually it was very difficult for us. Unemployment was tremendous, but what hurt us from the government side of it is the continual extensions of unemployment compensation. We had employees come to us at the time, and they would say, "Boy, we'd love to come back to work, but I can sit at home and make the same amount of money."
Just to chime in, when we started hiring again, it was amazing up in Lomira. We had some people come in, and after 2 weeks, they said, "You know what? I didn't have to work before. I'm going back there." And we started losing those people who we captured. It was amazing to me.
It's painful too when somebody comes in. You see, you got to that mindset. The other thing we do though up in Manitowoc areas, we do work with the local penal systems. We try to work. If we have rehabilitated, people that come up, and we give a second chance. We also work with all the local schools as far as working with the seniors. We do the traditional job fairs and such. And we do the employee outreach, asking our employees to go out and tell their neighbors and friends how great of a place it is to work at Spancrete. And we also give them a little bit of a financial reward if they were able to recruit somebody for us. So we do a number of things, on the professional side. We work through the LinkedIn and many of the social media outfits also. But I agree, it's an absolute challenge. And one of the other issues that we had in our business was the fact that we had a two-tier wage system. And that sounded all great when the economies were in rough shape, but what ends up happening is that hurts you when the economy starts coming back as far as it being able to attract employees. So we've had to make some corrections in that also.
The friends and family rewards thing works really well, and we've done it over time for years because no one's going to recommend the black sheep in the family, right? No one's going to recommend the friend who is just not going to work, because you own them.
And one other point that we work very hard on is with all of the different charities in the area. We found that also to be amazingly helpful, and particularly with millennials, as far as really wanting to be part of the workforce and wanting to contribute in other ways. And we worked with United Way, and we did one of these school backpack programs where basically our committee went and they stuffed 500 backpacks and such for the different schools. And when they came back and told me how wonderful it was, my initial thought, well, this must be going into the city of Milwaukee, I'm assuming. And the fact is that those backpacks are going into the Pewaukee School District, they were going into the Arrowhead School District, they were going into the Muskego School District. And I was surprised when we looked at it from that perspective, because you just sometimes push that on the side, which is an awful thing to do. There's people within our own communities that have many, many issues also. And we found our employees, when we talked about that, were very enlightened. And again, from that perspective, they found that to be very favorable. As far as at Spancrete, we find that to be something that we are very supportive of. And we think that's a big part of the family heritage. We're a family-run company. And that means a lot to us. And it means a lot to people that, come on board and work for us.
Thank you. I want to shift gears just a little bit and focus a little bit more on the customer. We had great conversations earlier. Let's shift and really look at, as a core, for organizations really to be successful, they need to recognize the importance of that customer, and in particular, potentially driving a different or a change in your business model. Over the past 5 years, how have your customers forced you to alter your business model? Maybe had you increased different practices or streamlined practices, and maybe talk a little bit about, sustainability as a potential driver in that arena.
I'd like to jump in for a second and talk about that. Two different aspects here. One is our customers are asking us, like all of you, to do more. They're shifting all the supply chain management onto the shoulders of the supply chain down below, and obviously they also want to use us as a bank. So the BMO Harris guys, I can point you in the direction of a lot of people that probably need your services. But you know, we're having to be integrated. We're trying to integrate with our customers' engineering teams so that we're not just a supplier of commodity type product, but we're integrated with their supply chain and the design process, and that's working incredibly well. But the bigger issue that it keeps me up at night, the longer term trend, we talked about workforce development and where's the next generation manufacturing professional come from. That's a big problem for us. Like I said, that's our #1 concern. Longer term, though, if we don't address the inversions and the reasons behind the inversions, we're not going to have to worry about the workforce development issues. The tax code is really at the core of all this, and we need to put that conversation in the forefront. People talk about, well, it's tax incentives for the wealthy. Well, no, it really isn't. All these pass-through entities, Joel, I presume your company is pass-through, LLC?
No, we're public. We used to be a S corp.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I am too.
But so, if we don't address if we don't address the tax code and remove the incentive for all these big Fortune 500 companies moving product and whole business lines overseas, I can't sell components to companies that have moved product into Asia, into China, India, all that stuff. They're not going to buy it from me. So if we don't address that, all these businesses won't have to worry about their workforce development issues.
Yeah, without all these customers, business would be so much easier. But the reality is in print, we're not making gadgets. You know, it's very process oriented. We're really a job shop. No two Vogue magazines that comes out of this plant are alike every month. And we're one of the few industries where our customer is also our supplier. So we can't just start the presses. We have to wait for them to manufacture the content. And because there's lots of digital technology, there's lots of process, lots of information, because there's lots of versions, there's a real tight connection between us and them process-wise. And so what's happened as of late, and you know, a lot of customers will create, you know, they have so much volume, they'll bring all this stuff in-house, photography. It's all reversing. I mean, you'll go to LL Bean, there's a huge photo studio there with people wearing uniforms like me. They're quad people in LL Bean. Recently, I went out to Cabela's headquarters, they were just in the news because they were just, bought by Bass Pro, but they had 140 people creating content at their headquarters, including video, you know, digital, social, and the traditional print stuff. We just welcomed 100 people into the quad world. So we have 100 people at Cabela's headquarters. We have 50 people in the offices at Dick's Sporting Goods. And so for us, it was kind of changing that Rubik's Cube and saying, how can we help these people? Well, one way is to make them more efficient in manufacturing content, but then also saying, making it very obvious, pointing out the obvious that in today's world with technology, there's things that shouldn't exist on your side of the wall anymore. Let me take that cost off your hands because I can do it much more efficiently than you can. And so that's one example, you know, of what we've done, and it goes on because for our customers, it's about making sure they survive in our industry using print as a medium. And so we've had to help them use data-driven marketing to create responsiveness in social media and in print. You know, so because there's this big transition in marketing happening. And so we've completely changed how we're being looked at by our customers.
Yeah, and actually to leverage off of that, one of the changes we've seen again in construction is because of the collaboration, because of the great communication tools, is that when we're asked to build structures to work with customers, they want to be more involved on the front end. And the key is to have all the trades together. We add our most value as a producer, as a supplier, if we're involved earlier in the process. We've built thousands and thousands of structures. We built parking decks and such. In fact, MSOE, we built MSOE's parking structure. So I think the collaboration piece, using the technology tools, is one of the big changes, and it allows us to reduce risk. And that's one of the big points. You're putting up a structure. You know, typically what happens right now is a lot of the piping that goes into mechanicals, electricals, that's all done on a job site. Well, if we do that using 3D modeling software, we can put that all in our factories. It takes all that work out, that it reduces all that safety risk.
All this integration leads to new business opportunities. So for us, you put all these people within someone's building to create efficiency. Suddenly we're talking to them about advertising campaigns. And then they're saying, you know what, I have like 5 different agencies I have to use to manage this campaign. Can you guys just do it for us? And so we've invested in a digital agency down in Chicago, Rise Interactive, which builds on Blue Soho, that we've already been doing all that. And so that integration of process with the customer has led to us suddenly being treated like an agency. We wouldn't have gotten there directly unless we worked on the integration of process with our customers.
A very similar model. And another example is that Spancrete also, we make the equipment that makes precast concrete. And we basically sell those machines all over the world. So we've been in China for over 20 years. We've got 18 installed machines. We have a customer 2 years ago that came to us, and they're changing some of the building construction methods in China, where they're actually, what they want to do is they've got a lot of multifamily housing requirements. And they were looking for a product that was a thinner product that they could also use the HVAC to its benefit. So you put the heating in the floor and you put the air conditioning in the roof. So we work with them collaboratively, and we co-invented a product called Rib Slab, and it was designed for that China market. And now we're actually installing it in a building here in Wisconsin, because we also think that Rib Slab product has potential benefit in our markets in the United States. So we would have never, without collaboration with that Chinese customer, wouldn't have probably come up and thought about that from ourselves in the United States.
Let's stay on the innovation topic. Can you share other innovations, maybe a more recent innovation that you think, boy, why didn't we do this earlier? I mean, we've all had that, right? That moment of, why have we not thought of this earlier?
I think sometimes it's because some things are so obvious you overlook them, right?
Yeah.
It's
so
like,
what
well,
caused you to finally look?
I think we just have a tendency to look for the complex, and sometimes simple is easy. Like if we just change this or change, we have a technology company, Quad Tech, that sells technology to the printing industry. And that's all been developed by people on the floor, the stuff that we've come up with. It's part of the culture is bottoms-up management, where I don't know how to run a machine faster. I mean, keep me away. Every time I show up, the machine shuts down. But the guys and gals on the floor, they know, you'll see them. They'll put duct tape around something to make it run faster, because the way printing works. They'll tweak this, they'll tweak that, and it's like, well, why do you do that? Well, because it makes the machine go faster. Okay, let's design that into the machine then. And so a lot of innovation is incremental, and a lot of it is listening to the people actually doing the work. And I think we a lot of times ourselves have been guilty of missing the obvious that the people on the floor already knew.
Yeah, we've one of the areas, I think, especially myself, being born and raised in the Milwaukee area, with the deep tunnel sewer system and all the challenges we have when we have the large amounts of rain with the runoff going into Lake Michigan not treated. A few years ago, we designed a new product called Pervious Concrete. It's Replenish is our brand name. And so you think of concrete, you don't think about water flowing through it, but we designed this product, and it's in mind for areas like we have here in Wisconsin, where the goal of MMSD is to keep as much water on the site during a rainfall so it doesn't go into the storm sewer for the first 24, 48 hours. But we've installed, in the city of Milwaukee, we've installed a number of sidewalk sections where basically it comes off the driveway. It's called a driveway interceptor. So instead of going into the sewer, it goes through the pervious concrete and saturates into the ground. We also have the Summerfest grounds, the main office, that's some Spancrete product there. And we've also now sold a number of sites in Chicago and Racine. So anyone that has any of these communities that have these issues with storm sewer runoff, that's a great product for that. I wish we would have thought of that 20 years ago.
As far as innovation goes, we're a contract manufacturer, so it gets a little bit interesting there. But what I see so often is, again, it goes back to the investment in the people and the technologies. You've got to be willing to put your people out side of the building where they can see other things going on that allows them to understand new technologies that are emerging or what's on the horizon. The International Machine Technology Show was just in Chicago a couple weeks ago. We sent a bunch of people down there. We also sponsored 3 coaches filled with high school kids to go down there. We've got, yesterday, some of our team members were in the customer facility working closely with our customer and their machine shop, trying to co-develop better processes on some very difficult materials. So we've got to be willing to put people out in perhaps uncomfortable situations. Certainly, you know, the customer's internal shop is a competitor of mine, but here we are collaborating for the greater good because we both recognize the long-term impact of it. But
And I think continuous improvement has to be front and center in all this because, you know, process is done because that's what the technology of the time allowed you to do. So often when new technology comes up, people speed up the same shitty process as a result, as opposed to looking at it as an opportunity to change the process. And I'd say that we've run across a ton of that. And the thing about process, you also have to have the measurement right. My favorite story of getting the measurement wrong is we were trying to figure out how to reduce costs in our paper warehouse of moving these big rolls of paper all over the place. So a bunch of us, process people with good intentions, came in and said, well, let's reduce the number of touches. That will, you know, less movement. So we got the guy who takes the paper out of the train, a bigger truck, so he could pick it up and go all the way to where he needs to. And the paper damage shot through the roof. And we couldn't figure out what was happening. Went to the guy who takes the paper out of the boxcar. He says, let me show you what happens with my big new fancy truck. And he went in, he tried to get the roll, he spun it, he's hitting things, and he goes, well, how, you know, we ask, how should we fix it? He goes, give me my little truck back and let us touch the paper more times. And sure enough, we self-corrected. I'm oversimplifying the story, Mike, I know, but you know, measurement is a key component of process. And just because you think you're doing continuous improvement, if you're using the wrong measurement, you may actually going backwards.
Yeah, that's a good point also. And, you know, just in general in the workforce, I think one thing that's very important with anybody that's in manufacturing is to continue to work on the business acumen within the organization. We also are a very process-driven business, but what I found in many cases is that we know how to make chips, we know how to make whatever the product is, but we don't know how to make money making it. And that business acumen is extremely important to make sure we've got that through the organization so everybody understands how we keep score, how we achieve success. And I found the same thing as Joel. In many cases, when we talk about some of the projects we've taken on, we spend, you know, 3 weeks working and fixing something and it had this much benefit. If we would have spent the 3 weeks on something that was going to give us this much benefit, how do you identify that? If you think about it from a process perspective, what's the constraint? You know, you'll get better results. But to get that, you got to have people that really understand business acumen and have that. And we do actually a lot of work. Our CFO runs, you know, Finance 101, Finance 102, Finance 103, which is some very basic things so people understand, you know, we're a for-profit business. We're not Project Hope. We're here to make money. And how do you do that?
So we're about coming to a close. We have a bunch of questions, so we're going to get those answered through BizTimes, so watch for those. But in close, I'd like to have you add a soundbite to this, right? Something that kind of is memorable, and I want you to complete this statement. To stay competitive, manufacturers today will need to do what? Give you a second to think. You're completely caught off guard on this one.
Continue to invest in your workforce. It's key that you have a good workforce and you invest in them and employees are engaged in a process and you invest in your people.
Stay self-critical. Because if, again, next generation manufacturing, if you think you get there, then you've become complacent and you're going to get clobbered.
rather than complain about the problems in front of us, let's come together to work on solutions.
Dan, I'm going to turn it back over. Let's thank our panelists. Very, very nice. Thank you very much.